Hello, my name is Todd, and I am your host for the Laundry List for the third time. And I'm here with my co-hosts, Blake and Charles. Soraya is home with her cats today, taking care of some business. And we have a very special guest today, really special guest, someone I've known for a long time, have a lot of respect for, does a lot of work, and has a lot of trauma in his past that he's now healing through the work he does and the help that he gives others. But before we get too deep into it, let's see. Charles and I are going to Atlanta for a pickleball tournament. Big pickleball tournament, Charles, in Atlanta. I think it's the Major League Pickleball, right?
It is. It's MLP.
I mean, they're both going to be one of the same here soon. Hopefully.
Well, I mean, that's separated. That's separated. It's coming back. It's like a relationship thing. The MLP
come on the podcast.
The MLP and the PPA need the Laundry List podcast.
Totally.
Everyone.
Why don't you send it to both of the CEOs and see if we can work something out?
Yeah, these are the traits that probably the MLP and PPA are suffering from. All right, so these are the traits that of an adult child, and these are the things that we developed as children that we utilize in our adult lives that are weaknesses. And the first one is, number one, we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Number two, we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Number three, we are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. Number four, we either became alcoholics, marry them or both, or find another compulsive personality such as a workaholic to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. Number five, we live life from the viewpoint of victims, and we are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. Number six, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. This enables us not to look too closely at our own faults. Number seven, we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. Number eight, we became addicted to excitement. Number nine, we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and ultimately rescue. 10, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much. That's also known as denial. Number 11, we judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. Number 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything in this world to hold on to a relationship.
Anything.
You done anything?
Anything.
Mm-hmm. Anything. That's
anything and everything.
Come on. There's no limit to the anything. We'll do anything to hold on to a relationship in order to not experience those painful abandonment feelings. And we often receive those from living with sick people who were never there emotionally for us. 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and we became para-alcoholics, also known as codependents, and took on the characteristics of that disease even though we never picked up a drink. And finally, para-alcoholics, codependents, were reactors rather than actors, Tony A.
Very nice. Very nice, Charles. Blake, that's a hard act to follow, but would you please read the promises?
Absolutely. And this is what we get after doing the deal. We will discover our real identities by loving and accepting ourselves. 2, our self-esteem will increase as we give ourselves approval on a daily basis. 3, fear of authority figures and the need to people please will leave us. 4, our ability to share intimacy will grow inside us. 5, as we face our abandonment issues, we will be attracted by strengths and become more tolerant of weaknesses. 6, we will enjoy feeling stable, peaceful, and financially secure. 7, we will learn how to play and have fun in our lives. 8, we will choose to love people who can love and be responsible for themselves. 9, healthy boundaries and limits will become easier for us to set. 10, fears of failure and success will leave us as we intuitively make healthier choices. 11, with help from our ACA support group, we will slowly release our dysfunctional behaviors. 12, gradually, with our higher power's help, we will learn to expect the best and get it.
Expect the best and get it. I didn't even know what that meant until recently. Thank you guys.
It's my favorite phrase.
Yeah.
I use it all the time now. I tell people that they should expect the best and get it.
You used it on me when I gave him stuff and not you. You're like, I'm going to continue to expect the best. And and get it.
And
And I finally got the stuff.
Yeah, and then you get it. Yes.
And then I give it away, get to keep it.
I like it.
yeah, I think not next week because we got Paulie coming on
Paulio,
next week.
great-
but the week
great guy.
after,
Paulio.
the week after, we're going to have Charles come on and talk about why he doesn't want to date. He says because he's too busy.
I am.
There's no one busier than me out there, and I'm dating.
You're married.
I'm dating my wife.
Okay.
I'm in a relationship.
Good save.
Yeah. So I'm not accepting that answer, and we're going to process that on the laundry list, and we're going to let callers call in and ask questions on why Charles can't date.
I'm going to get some plants in there too.
Yeah, why can't he date?
Charles, help me.
I'm in a
understand.
relationship right now with my work
pickleball.
right now. Yeah, with my work.
With Proton. Well,
Workaholic.
Charles, Blake, you both know our guests.
Yes.
And we're very excited.
I know
to have him on.
Jesse.
He's a very nice guy. He's the nicest guy.
Brand new in the rooms, he would just come up and tell me that I'm his best friend.
There's a story.
I've always appreciated it.
You do have that quality about you, Jesse. First of all, welcome to the laundry list.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Happy to be
Jesse.
here.
You got to talk close to the microphone because this is not a high-end studio. This is a B studio. But yeah, you've always had that warm, inviting sense. And I know I've always felt safe and loved around you when I see you at rooms, coffee shops, wherever. No matter what I'm going through, it's like your smile and hug just makes me feel more at home and at peace and say, like I said, safe and loved. So thank you for coming on.
People love Jesse, that's for sure.
Well, that's enough. I'm going home.
Yeah,
that's what I was coming for right there.
Yeah. So welcome. And, this is a podcast, as it says in the title, a podcast about relationships. And some of the taglines are love, truth, family, happiness, honesty, and being an adult. And we could actually have a podcast about each one of those separately. But, I'd love to hear a little bit. I know a little bit about your story and your background, but if you wouldn't mind giving us like a 5-10 minute synopsis of your story. I know you were in the military, childhood, your brother, just kind of, if you can kind of wrap it up in a 5 to 10 minute scenario, and then we can kind of get into questions, and then some of the stuff you're doing today with your career, with your life, with your relationships, and how you're living a healthier, more sound life with boundaries and getting what you want, expecting the best and getting it, those kind of things from the promises, and how you're doing that. Because I know you and I both have been in the morass of pain, suffering, and addiction for, a decent part of our life, and how today we're not living like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of background. I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness and kind of had that, shame core from the get-go. And,
well, what does that mean? I mean, I know what Jehovah's Witness is. I don't know a lot about it, but when you say shame, like.
Sure. So, I mean, it was, just that kind of concept of having this expectation that was that you were incapable of living up to, kind of like, if you fantasized about a woman, you might as well have had sex with her. Right. And so, from even like 10 years old, I was shamed, because I
for just being a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And just, and so it's just like you have this
no birthdays, right?
No birthdays, no Christmas, no
really?
Hanukkah, nothing. Nothing. Yeah. So, so it was, when I was growing up, it seemed like a perfectly normal way to live. And it seemed, I had community and I had family and I had all of those things. But then as I got older, recognized that it was a type of spiritual abuse.
Did you hang around a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses when you were young?
Well, that was all we were allowed to
so
hang
you
out.
were like,
yeah. I was, we were in this very sheltered, bubble that,
What part of the country were you?
We were in the Pacific Northwest, primarily Washington and Oregon, in my younger years. So, and then, when I was about 16 years old, I ran running and screaming from that way of life and kind of just went straight to drugs and alcohol. I dropped out of high school and just, went and I was running the streets and I was acting like a crazy kid. And then, I tried a lot of different things to kind of, I thought that I was lacking discipline, which I certainly was. And so I thought, joining the military I was having a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol. And I thought that if I went and joined the military, that would solve them. And on some level, it helped, for sure. I grew up a lot. I learned a lot about myself, 3 deployments in Iraq, but then came out of that with pretty serious alcohol issue, and then and some additional trauma. But consistently in my life, relationships, intimate relationships primarily, have always been an issue and a challenge for me. And outside of the, I saw quite a, my share of messy stuff in combat zones in Iraq, but the things that caused me the most trauma were the relationships that I had and that continued to fail. And then
who were the relationships with at that time in your life?
Women.
So romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. These aren't relationships with your buddies and
no.
military.
I'm talking specifically about intimate relationships. Okay. Yeah. And
do you see how the correlation on how the messiness and the emotions with the relationships at that point in your life, how they really related to your upbringing and the emotions you felt when you were a young kid?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I had a lot of, I talk about like occurring world belief systems in work that I'm currently doing. And I had a lot of occurring world belief systems, meaning that I saw myself and others like having these roles. And it was just a way that I perceived the world. And it was broken. It was really flawed based upon, the trauma from my family, from the religion, from the military, all of that stuff. And it just compounded. And so, I started my journey in recovery in 2010.
So wait, so you got out, when did you go to the military?
In 2002.
Okay.
And I spent 7 years in the military, and I was married and divorced twice before I was 30. And
from when you're in the military?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And were you using and drinking in the military?
I was drinking for sure. So I was using a lot up until the time that I went into the military. I didn't drink a whole lot before I went into the military. And then when everything else was taken away from me, I diverted to alcohol. And, I was able to kind of fly under the radar. There's a lot of drinking that goes along. And then, I worked I was a chef the majority of my life. And so being in the military and working in the back of the house kitchens, my drinking can look a lot like what everybody else's does. Right. It's just, it's kind of like being in a kitchen is like borderline being on a pirate ship. Right. And so, so but looking back, I set my life up that way to where that was normal in the way that I wanted to live my life, which was hard and fast and a lot of drugs, alcohol. And
so you hear the laundry list and, you've read it a bunch of times. We just read it today. What are some of the ones that really speak out to you when you think of the relationships you were in your 20s?
Well, I definitely think the one that Charles kind of honed in on, I'll do anything, and I think that both my upbringing, and so not only was I raised in that fundamentalist Christian organization, but they highly discouraged, education or like getting ahead in life, that if you were wealthy, you were looked down upon. And so my family was very poor. And so I had this deprivation mindset, and not just when it came to resources, but with love and pretty much everything as far as what was available to me in this world.
So your family didn't show a lot of affection and like
my family was very affectionate, actually, but also abusive, and so it was a conflicting message. I got a lot of
the shaming and the like criticism and
yeah. Well, physical abuse, yeah, a lot of that. So, I got a lot of conflicting messages growing up. So my paradigms were just kind of broken.
So you needed the alcohol just to survive.
Absolutely.
In the military. Having all those feelings and all that shame and criticism going on in your head,
right?
Like you needed that alcohol just to survive.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. There was no way to live in my head with the shit that was going on. It just was not. And so, got into recovery in 2010, and I've had some ups and downs in recovery in that period of time. And but what I would say, I want to say maybe 5 years ago, I had discovered the work of my mentor, which we'll get into in a minute. And I was looking for communities and groups around his work, and I couldn't find any. But I guess, in the relationship context, that was where my primary issues were at. I just couldn't, and it wasn't even that that I couldn't have successful relationships. That was certainly it. But the internal turmoil that I experienced from relationships ending. One time when I was in Iraq, I had to go surrender my weapon to the medics because I was having very serious suicidal ideations. And that was really what, in work that I do now, we call it the big stick, or in recovery, we call it our bottom. And that was it, where I was just like, I am done having suicidal ideations over
A woman.
And it's just never going to happen again. And I'm done living that way. And so, I went and I did CODA for a couple years, and that was helpful. We talked a little bit about that before the podcast, and I found that to be, beneficial. But I also found that I was very uncomfortable with my own masculinity. And even though I had I had 3 brothers, no sisters, and I was in the military in kitchens, that I was very uncomfortable around men and masculinity in general. And I like to kind of think of myself as being different and differentiated from other men. And, and so the work in CODA, while it did help me become less codependent, it didn't help me embrace that part of myself. And it was a recipe for disasters.
Yeah,
relationships.
Actually, at least the CODA meetings I've been to kind of feeds into the opposite, the femininity and the
right.
That part of I think of who we are as men.
Right. Absolutely. So
yeah. So and I know we talked before the podcast about a current relationship that you're recently out of, and talk about the feelings today as opposed to when you were in the military and drinking, and how do you deal with them? Like, what kind of tools do you have so you don't try to find a weapon to end your life, or take destructive acts because you're in so much pain?
I think the big difference is that I have safe places to reveal myself. I have safe people to reveal myself to. And so, whereas I would be trying to figure all of that stuff out on my own in the past, I have people and places that I can go and I can talk about that stuff. That's one thing. The other thing is that I have really leaned into embracing the abundance in life. And it's a practice that I have to do consistently because my default is to go into deprivation. And prior to getting into this most recent relationship, I was able to get to a place where I was not just okay on my own, but like I was happy and thriving on my own. And that was a big difference. And I took some time outside of relationships. I dated here and there, but I wasn't in a committed relationship for a few years before this most recent relationship. And so taking that time and learning to not only just be okay, but really happy and thriving with myself. And, I went and I learned who I was, and I learned about the things that I enjoyed doing, and I created a great cake of a life. And so when the relationship ended, I never made the relationship the central focus of my life. It was icing on the cake. And so when the relationship ended, I still have a great cake of a life. Still have all of my regular activities that I like to do. I still have all of my communities, and I didn't let any of those things go for the sake of the relationship. And that was the big deal, so while I still experience the grief and the sadness, and I honor that, and I don't try to distract myself with it, I have a life that wasn't centered around
and that
the
other part of
relationship.
your life helps you heal.
Yes.
The sadness and the mourning from the relationship,
Right.
I find. But if your whole world is your relationship, there's nothing else to help heal the relationship.
Exactly.
Charles, I know you can relate to Jesse's story, and you've known him a while. What would you like to ask Jesse?
Well, that last thing you said, that's big time. Right. So, hey, Todd, that's big time. Relationship ends historically prior to doing some of this work. And I don't even want to do the things that I enjoy doing. I don't even want, right? The relationship's over. There's nothing in this fucking world that's going to bring me joy except for her.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't care about working out, making money, hanging out with my friends.
Hey, we're going golfing. Hey, we're going to go play pickleball. Hey, we're going to go to a movie. Hey,
nothing sounds good.
Nothing. You're not going to get me out of that zone, right? Unless it's her. That's the only thing that's going to fix me or make me feel better. And he just said, today, I still maintain doing these things that I like to do. I still maintain communication with the individuals that are healthy for me to talk to. I'm shutting off because I don't want to hear it. Where is she? Right. So that's that painful abandonment feeling. And all right. So that's huge. I really like that, how he said that. I still maintain doing the things I like to do, and I still maintain the communication with the people that are healthy for me. Mm-hmm. So that's big time. You go ahead.
Well, and the other thing is I think the big difference when I went into this relationship, I didn't get that one-itis, right? Where it was like, oh, she's my life. In fact, I was very intentional. And although I would like to have a long-term committed relationship, what I kept in the forefront of my mind is if I get 6 more of these in my lifetime, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And well, that may seem macabre or whatever, like, or, like it's, but the reality of the matter is even if I do everything right in the relationship, right, she could walk out in front of a bus tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And even if the relationship and my most recent relationship, it didn't dissolve because it was unhealthy. In fact, it was the healthiest relationship I've ever been in.
Just didn't work.
Right. So.
And that's getting to acceptance. I think that we really never got to because we were so busy playing the wounded, injured little kid, and I think it's important, like you said, that the relationship is the icing and our life is the cake.
Well, I think too, to go to Charles's point about nothing, I don't want to do anything. I think the difference today is that I experience my grief rather than identifying with it. Like you
feel the feelings.
Yes, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed, but I'm not sad. I'm not depressed. I'm experiencing this, and I can experience those feelings. And rather than trying to shove them down, medicate them, whatever, I can experience them and understand that it's not who I am, but it's something that I'm experiencing.
I find it's a fine line because experiencing your feelings can very easily turn into being the victim and your identity. And I've been working on that a lot lately, where I can experience my feelings and cry and feel sad and mourn, but it doesn't have to become my identity and who I am, because it's so easy to represent and feel attached to those feelings because those were so common when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, right? Yeah. The shame, the criticism, the sadness. So if I go back into that time in my life and like, oh, okay, Todd's feeling these feelings again. Let's go back there. I'm the victim. And I'm all of a sudden poor little Todd. And my job is to take care of that little 6, 7, 8-year-old injured little boy and love him and care for him. Not for that little injured boy to get sympathy and attention from the world. Mm-hmm. It's my job. It's not your job or my wife's job. It's my job. So when I start going, all you guys, make me feel better. I'm sorry. I need to call my therapist every day.
Right.
I'm in trouble.
Right.
I'm going down the wrong road.
Yeah.
It's my job to take care of myself. And that's, I think, what you're saying is that you're showing up for yourself, feeling the feelings, but you're showing up for yourself and taking the action to move forward.
Right. And I think that we, a lot of people, we have the tendency to either want to deny the feelings or to intensify them rather than just experience them as they are. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's that like identifying. And I want to become the victim. I want to call Charles every day and have him listen to me for an hour. And I get addicted to, people feeling sorry for me and being the victim. And so I'm intensifying those emotions, or I completely disregard them. And there's this
stoic and like, oh, everything's fine. Right. What's the motto of the AA book? Don't talk, don't feel, don't trust. When I start going into those mantras, I'm screwed. Because that's what I was taught when I was a kid. Don't feel, don't trust, don't talk. Mm-hmm. So keep it all bottled up inside. Everything's fine. Right. How you doing? Everything's great. Meanwhile, I'm thinking about tonight's the last night of my life because I can't deal with the feelings, but I'm not going to tell anyone else that because I was taught not to share those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blake, I know you can relate to a lot what Jesse's talking about.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about in your story about suicidal ideations, like what would you say to the person that maybe is having those and hasn't told anybody and is like genuinely terrified? Like what is like, and I'm sure, more people, can admit that, they've had that. I know I have, on and off a lot of different times in my life. Like what would you tell that person?
Yeah, I would say, because I think that people are afraid. Like, if you don't have a plan and you're not like, there's, you don't have it all plotted out. I think people are afraid that there's some stigma around it and it's going to be like a cry for help. Right. And so I think recognizing that if you just let people know, like, hey, these are my thoughts, I don't have a plan, right? That you can kind of like get over, a lot of that stigma. Because I've talked to therapists about that before, right? And they're like mandatory reporters, and I'll just let them know, like, hey, I don't have a plan in place, but this is what's going on, right? And just being really transparent about that, and understanding that not every time that you mention that is going to be perceived as a cry for help. And that sometimes you can express that and people will understand that you're just having a hard time right now. And that for me, it's a control mechanism. It's a soothing mechanism, right? Because I'm going through all of this pain, and it's like, well, at least I know that I have a way out, right? And so if things get too bad, at least I have this way out, and I use it as like a pain pill, right? But the problem with that is when we don't talk about that, and we bottle that stuff up, and you don't express to people, like, this is where my mind's at, then we can start to attach to that, and then we don't know what happens.
Then it festers.
Yeah, it plants a seed in there, and if it's brought into the light, it can't live in the light, right? And once it's shared and once it's spoken, it loses its power. We've learned that in the rooms, right?
Yeah, and Jesse, for all you out there, Jesse is a life coach who works, very closely with men. All men, right? Just men.
Yep.
And I have a lot of respect for him, and he's dedicated his life to helping other men deal with relationship issues. What would you say that in your work today? What are some of the most common themes that you see with men struggling in their relationships? And you talk mostly about romantic relationships, or is it all relationships, or is it mostly romantic?
I think that's typically the thing that brings guys to the work, right? Yeah, that's the thing that tends.
It's like, I may not get along with mom or dad or brother, sister,
right,
employer, but it's the romantic that really affects you, because that's what triggers that childhood wound so deeply.
Right. Yeah. So that's typically the thing that will bring guys to the work, and so there's a lot of that, and I also think that there's a lot of guys out there in our current society that aren't getting their needs met in that area, and they just don't know how. Right? They don't know how to interact with women. They don't know how. They
don't know how to speak up for themselves.
Right? They don't know, and
they don't know how to end it. We always say we're horrible enders.
Yes. Exactly. Right.
Yeah, I'm a horrible ender in any scenario.
Yeah. I don't want to end it because I don't want conflict. I don't want to feel alone. I don't want to feel the feelings. I don't want to feel abandonment. So I just won't end it.
Right.
Even though I'm not getting my needs met, not even close.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be, that's the, so yeah, I think that men are really disconnected from men in our current society. We don't experience this because of our 12-step communities, right? We're encouraged to spend time with men. I know that, we go to men's meetings and we're encouraged to call guys on the phone, but out there in the regular world, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And guys don't know how to find guy friends, and they don't know how with those guy friends, they might go and they might play golf, or they might go grab a beer, or they might go
but they're not talking about this stuff.
They don't have a safe space. And that was when I got into this work, I realized, like, we're lucky. But other guys, where do they go and talk about this stuff? You know what I'm saying? If it's like you're having problems making your girlfriend come, like, where do you go and talk about that? Right? You can't talk about that on the golf course.
I usually just call my mom, but she's not
she's
taking my calls anymore. Yeah.
Right. But
mango. I just want
mango.
That's our safe word.
Yeah. It was kumquat, but that got messy.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I feel so comfortable with my fellowship of men that I have in the 2 12-step programs I'm in, that I can share everything, and I literally have no anxiety.
Right.
None.
Yeah, and so many of the things that Dr. Glover, my mentor, that he talks about, revealing ourselves to save people, getting and finding male friends and all of that stuff, like we have access to it in our circles. But for other guys that maybe joining a 12-step program, is a big deal for most people. And like their life's essentially got to be on the line. And so for guys to go and join ACA or to join CODA or something like that, it's usually not their first inclination.
Right.
Like I'm having
an amazing year. I'm going to go join CODA. Or
like I'm having problems dating. I should probably join a 12-step program. Right. I'm having problems in my relationships. I should probably go join a 12-step program. And so that's basically what I do, is facilitate that. I kind of give what we got in our communities to guys that maybe wouldn't be inclined to go to a 12-step program for the issues that they're dealing with.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, I went down to the Glover workshop. We were just talking about it 4 years ago. And one of the exercises, and I'm sure you've done this too with him, is a setting boundaries and holding your boundaries. So literally you'll set this like imaginary line, and there'll be one guy on one side and one guy on the other side, and like one guy will cross it, and you'll see the reaction of the other person. And if the other person keeps backing off, and the other guy keeps crossing the line again, and the other person keeps backing off, I mean, there's your answer. You know how he's going to be in a relationship. You know that when his partner pushes him, he's going to back away. He's a conflict avoidant, person. And that was my case. Like when I was there, and this guy kept, crossing the line, and I would look at him like, you fucker. And then I'd back up. Then he would cross it again and be like, okay, and this time I meet it, and I'd back up another 2 steps. Mm-hmm. And Glover's like, do you see what you're doing?
Right.
I'm like, what am I doing? He's like, you're backing up. You're not holding your line. I said, don't let him cross your boundary. And you twice let him cross your boundary.
Right.
So why would it be any different with your relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and I love this concept of boundaries, right? And what I think, so I remember one time I was supposed to be leaving my ex-girlfriend alone, right? And I wasn't, and I kept getting tangled up with her, and I needed to set some boundaries with her and maintain those boundaries. And I asked my therapist, I said, well, how do I do that and not come across as an asshole, right? How do I not hurt her feelings? And she said, Jesse, you can't simultaneously caretake the other person's feelings and set a boundary. If somebody's feelings weren't potentially going to be hurt, a boundary wouldn't need to be set. And it was like, oh, holy shit. Like, and that really resonated with me. And then also, one of the things that Dr. Glover talks about is how boundaries are actually a very loving thing to do. Because if you think about it, they actually allow us to operate together, right? So if you think about like traffic laws as being boundaries, they allow all of us to travel at a high rate of speed because we all know what the rules are, right? And so in order to be able to maneuver within a relationship, there needs to be boundaries, and everybody needs to have a clear-cut, understanding of what the other person's boundaries are so that we can operate together without smashing into each other.
Yeah, and otherwise it's just complete lying. Like if you don't have boundaries and tell the truth, it's complete, you're just lying constantly. Like, I use the example, honey, you want to go get Chinese food tonight? I'm feeling Chinese. Oh, sure, honey, I love Chinese. Well, I might be allergic to Chinese and hate Chinese.
Right.
But I'm saying I love Chinese because I want to make her happy.
Right.
I mean, how many times have we done that? And that's lying at the core.
And it's manipulation, because
it's manipulating and lying.
Yeah, there's a covert contract in there that says, you'll love me, you'll be happy with me, you're not going to, abandon me as long as I say that I want Chinese food when you want to get Chinese food.
Right.
Right. And so then when they do abandon you or are upset with you, you're like, well, what the hell? I said I like Chinese food. Right. Like
you've been lying for years.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I love the work that you do and the work that Glover did. I read No More Mr. Nice Guy, and then I bought it on Audible and listened to it a gazillion times. And then I'd listened to the other book too, Dating Essentials for Men, I think it was called, and that was a phenomenal book. And a lot of it's common sense, but he's a doctor in marriage counseling and just has a lot of great tools, I think, for men to learn how to date in a healthy way. So, Charles, when we have you on in a couple of weeks and we start talking about reintroducing you to the dating world, I'm going to give you a copy of this book and download the Audible version for you so you can start learning how to date in a healthy way. So there's no U-Haul on the second or third date.
I look forward to that, Todd.
You're not getting beaten. You're not getting yelled at. And you are respected, loved, and feeling safe for who you are.
Sounds fantastic. I'm looking forward to that.
And I'm going to buy you 6 sessions with Jesse.
There you go.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take you through it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole, my current relationship is the first relationship I've had where I do not feel nervous, anxious, fear whatsoever, because I am 100% myself. And that's the first time, and I mean, I'm 55 in my life that I've had a relationship where I completely believe I'm my authentic self. And it feels great, you know, and at times it feels boring, to be honest with you, because there is no drama. There is none of this yelling and screaming and I'm, you know, lying or really people pleasing, you know, I mean, it's just, she could have my phone. She can look at anything. She can hear any of my conversations. This morning I was on one with my therapist and she was 6 feet away eating her breakfast and I have nothing to hide. Zero.
Right.
I could talk about fantasies with other women. I could talk about anything.
Right.
And I feel safe. I don't feel like I'm going to get yelled at and berated and like just because I am who I am and I let her be who she is, you know.
How many times have you walked into your friends' houses that are married or in a relationship and you walk in there and you can just feel that shit just went down, right? Or the air is tense or you can tell she fucking is pissed at him or when I walk into your house, I never feel that. It is always light. It is always, I'm just hitting on the points that you're making. It's just light and comfortable every time you walk in there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Have you ever experienced that? Walked into someone's house and you can
yeah.
just tell like, hey, how you doing?
All the time.
Yes.
All the time.
Okay. Do you experience that when you go to Todd's? Like Alex opens the door. Hey, what's going on? Todd's laid out on the sofa. It's just comfortable. It is. I've picked up on that. So
yeah, no, I definitely, well, we do the work.
I'm supporting what you were just saying.
Yeah.
It's true.
She's
true.
done the work. I've done the work. And
Yep.
of course we're going to get caught in people pleasing and manipulation still, but we catch ourselves. We make amends when we need to make amends and we drop the egos when we drop the egos. And, you know, she lets me have my emotions. I mean, I've been mourning for a while and she's been going through some stuff and we let each other go through what we need to go through and not try to caretake, you know, because my whole life, I didn't want the woman ever to feel any emotion outside of happiness.
Right.
If they were upset, if they were sad, if it was my job to fix it, period.
Yep.
And I don't, you know, have that today. I let her have her emotions and just say, I'm here for you. I love you. And I'll support you any way I can. You
Right.
know?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing for guys, you know, I think because a lot of us have, you know, we've got those mommy issues, right? And so like when our feminine partner is angry or upset, we immediately revert back into that, to that little boy and we try to fix her. And rather than, you know, and what she really wants is safety in those moments. She wants to feel safe. And when you get on her emotional roller coaster, it doesn't make her feel safe, right? Then the fact that you were so easily swayed by her emotions rather than being the pillar for her in that moment it causes a lot of issues. And where we think that we're being empathetic or whatever the case may be, really it causes a lot of problems when we try to do that. So
Yeah. So true. It's amazing. I never knew we'd figure any of this out or like learn this stuff, you know, like
Who knew? Yeah.
My whole life, I'm like, well, this is just the way it is. You know, this was my role model when I was growing up. This is the way it's going to be.
Right.
I was just talking to my dad on the way over here and he's 85 and he's still scared of my mom. He's like, oh yeah, no, don't tell mom that, you know? I'm like, wait, did you just say that? Don't tell mom that because you're afraid that she's going to get mad at you. You're 85.
Right.
You're coming to the end of your life, but I get it. Because without this program, I'm that same guy.
Yeah.
You know, the same exact guy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can't fault him for it.
yeah,
So,
no, not at all. I have empathy for him. You know.
Yeah.
So anything else, guys, before we wrap up and talk and get ready for Charles's big podcast coming up, his coming out party?
If I could just make a quick plug.
Yeah,
Plug yourself.
Well, I do that. That's love life.
Touche.
So yeah, I just want to, you know, myself and 6 other coaches have been working with Dr. Glover over the last year to launch an online men's platform so that all guys across the world, regardless of where they're at, have access to this. And it's called integrationnation.net. And there's 9 calls a week where, you know, guys sit around and they talk about this stuff. And then there's opportunities to connect with other men that are also conscious and trying to be the best versions of themselves. And then there's access to coaches and there's a lot of content on there. So if there's guys out there that are looking to do some more work, or they're having problems in any area of their life and they're looking for other men to connect with, highly encourage them to go to integrationnation.net and
integrationnation.net. I'll check that out too. And if someone wants to reach you, if they have an interest in what your coaching work, where do they reach you at?
So my website is Coach Jesse Bush, and that's BUSCH, and CoachJesseBush.com. You'll know it when you get on there because there's a big sign that says "Let's do scary shit."
This is great.
Okay. And then what about your handle, Instagram?
Same thing. Coach Jesse Bush is. I'm Coach Jesse Bush everywhere. So YouTube, Instagram, all of that stuff.
Got it.
Yeah. So
reach out to Jesse, and then you could also email us and text and comment to us, and if you want a red book or you want to contact Jesse. But we really appreciate you coming on and helping people. My purpose in life now is to love myself and to help people. Love myself and celebrate my magnificence and internal part of myself, and also try to help people.
Absolutely, man.
So thanks for coming on. You're definitely inspiring, and we appreciate your love and support. And we will see you next week on the laundry list.